Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the Queen Spin ball python. The Queen Spin consists of the lesser, the pastel, the pinstripe, and the spider genes. And they all come together to form a pretty interesting combination. It almost looks kind of like a xanthic with most of the colors stripped away with a really faint outline of the pinstripe. And it's actually 4 genes working together, which is kind of an unexpected combo when you think about the Queen Spin. And what I want to do today is I want to show you the individual genes first and then combine them to slowly get to the Queen Spin. We'll actually cover 5 different combinations: the King Pin, the King Spin, the Emperor Pin, the Queen Pin, and then finally we'll put all the genes together and end with the Queen Spin. And then once we get to the Queen Spin, we'll add a few more genes into the Queen Spin so you can see the true potential of that combination. So today I want to jump over the internet and I want to show you the potential of the Queen Spin ball python. Alright, so I'm going to jump over here on Morphmarket.com and I want to start with this snake right here. This is the lesser, and the lesser is the one gene that kind of links the kings and the queens. So if someone has a ball python and they have king or queen in the common name of that combination, you can be sure that lesser is in the mix. And the lesser is, I'd say, probably one of the most challenging parts of the Queen Spin project because the lesser is in the blue-eyed leucistic complex. And if you actually take lesser and combine it with any other gene in the blue-eyed leucistic complex, you end up with an all-white snake with blue eyes, which is a pretty awesome snake. But the problem with the white snake is it really masks all the other genes in the combination. So you can have like a lesser Mojave, which is an all-white snake, and you can have like 10 other genes in the mix, and the white snake would completely mask all the other genes in there. So sometimes you can make a really high-end combination and accidentally hit the blue-eyed leucistic complex where you end up with the white snake and you're not sure of the other genes. And sometimes, as a matter of fact, you can actually pick up a pretty good deal over on Morphmarket looking at the blue-eyed leucistics that usually sell pretty low in price compared to some of the other combinations. And a lot of them are, it could be a possible 5 other genes, and you're kind of taking a chance on what other genes are in the blue-eyed leucistic. Sometimes you can pick them up for relatively inexpensive and really hit all those genes if you get lucky. And there's quite a few genes in the blue-eyed leucistic. There's the lesser, the Russo, the Mojave, the Phantom, the Mystic, the Special, the Bamboo, all those genes in the blue-eyed leucistic. If you mix them with lesser, you'll end up with the all-white snake with blue eyes. So what I want to do is I want to start with a kingpin, and the way you make a kingpin is you take the lesser and you mix it in with a pinstripe. This is what a pinstripe looks like. And I have to say the pinstripe is probably one of my favorite standalone genes. A lot of times the pinstripe can be like a bright metallic gold. Some of them can be a little bit browned out. And kind of the cool thing about the pinstripe is, I'm really into the bamboos and the bamboo combinations. If you mix pinstripe in with bamboo, a lot of times you'll get really metallic looking combinations, which is pretty awesome. So here's what happens if you take pinstripe and you mix it in with the lesser, you get the kingpin. Take a look at this. This is what the kingpin looks like. And essentially what the kingpin looks like, it kind of has the pattern of the pinstripe, but then you have the lesser really bringing in a lot of the yellow color and bringing in a lot of the high contrast, but kind of changing the color of the pinstripe. It's kind of an interesting combination. And to actually get from the kingpin over to the queen pin, essentially what you do is you add pastel to the mix. And this is what a pastel looks like. And most people, when they think of pastel, they think of a yellow snake. Some pastels can be really bright yellow and some can be pretty browned out. And I'd say as far as common genes, pastel is probably the #1 most common gene in all of ball pythons. Pastel mixes really well with almost every combination. And here's what happens if you take pastel and you work it into the king pin, you get the queen pin, which is a pretty amazing combination. Essentially what the queen pin looks like, it looks almost like a pinstripe as far as the pattern, and then you get a really awesome color enhancement between the lesser and the pastel, which really brightens and enhances it and really brings out a lot of the yellow color. Pretty amazing combination. So in order to go from the queen pin over to the queen spin, which we're finally trying to get to, you actually add a spider to the combination. And kind of the weird thing about spider is when you mix it with lesser, you get kind of a weird effect that almost gives it an axanthic look, where it really kind of strips all the color from the combination, which is kind of weird. So the spider, essentially, this is what the spider looks like. It gets its name from the spider web pattern that comes right down the top of the snake. And the spider is pretty awesome. A lot of times it'll have almost this, it's kind of like a pseudo calico, this white coming up the sides. And sometimes it can have a high amount of white and sometimes a low amount of white. And I'd say most spider combinations have a really crazy head stamp on top of the head. And one thing you have to watch out for with the spider is you want to kind of avoid breeding two spiders together, because you can, a lot of people think it's a lethal combination, so you kind of want to avoid the super spider. So you really don't want to breed like two queen spins together because they both contain spider. So here's what happens if you take spider and you work it into the queen pin, you get the queen spin. Take a look at this. This is a pretty amazing combination, and the addition of spider completely transforms the visual appearance of the snake. It's pretty amazing how it really kind of strips away all the color by adding in spider. So that's the combination of the spider and the lesser, really stripping away all the color. And you can definitely see the influence of the pinstripe. It almost looks like the pinstripe pattern on this snake. It looks like a washed out pinstripe. Pretty amazing. And then you get the lesser kind of bringing in the color with the pastel. Pretty amazing combination. So you can actually take the queen spin and go one step further and add one more copy of the pastel to make the super queen spin. Take a look at this. This is what the super queen spin looks like. And it's essentially when you have two copies of the pastel, a lot of times in a lot of combinations, it'll really fade it out. As a matter of fact, you kind of look at some of these combos with the super pastel and you think, you know, that might not be that impressive of a combination with so many genes with the addition of super pastel. But keep in mind, if you're actually breeding something like this, everything you breed this to will get one copy of a pastel. It's a really super powerful breeder with the addition of super pastel into these multi-gene combinations. And kind of the interesting thing about this, if you actually take a look at some of the genetics on this one, and kind of the common name too. So this is the super pastel butter spider pinstripe. So the butter is kind of interesting. The butter, a lot of people think the butter is the same thing as lesser. Some people think it's different lines of the same gene, and some people think it's a completely different gene. And they pretty much act the same in combinations. I actually did a video on butter versus lesser, and pretty much what I found is that some butters can be a lot brighter than some of the lessers. Some of the lessers can be a lot darker than some of the butters, but there's quite a bit of overlap between butter and lesser, where you can get some butters looking exactly the same as lesser. So I'd say, you know, in my opinion, I think the butter and the lesser are really super close. Sometimes they can look almost identical, but I think they are two different lines of pretty much the same gene. And the other thing that's kind of interesting on this one is if you actually look at some of the genes in this one actually has the butter and the lesser listed in the combination. So remember, if you have butter and lesser in any one snake, both of those are in the blue-eyed leucistic complex. So if this really had the butter and the lesser in this snake, you'd end up with a solid bright white snake with bright blue eyes that would mask all the other genes. And what a lot of people do over here, especially, you know, kind of, I would say they're probably doing it kind of for the search engine over here on Morphmarket. A lot of people are looking for the killer queen spin. So essentially what this is the butter version of the killer queen spin. So a lot of times people will put both genes, the butter and the lesser. So if you're searching for the killer queen spin, that is usually the lesser version of the combination with the lesser gene in the mix. So some people actually put both genes. As a matter of fact, if you don't know anything about genetics or ball pythons and you come over here and buy the snake, I've actually had some comments under my videos and they start listing all the genes in your snake, and I'm like, I hate to break your heart, but you know, your snake, if it doesn't look bright white, it doesn't have butter and lesser both in the combination. And I can see why people do it, just for kind of the search capability over here on Morphmarket. So this is the banana. The banana is a really visually dominant gene, and kind of the interesting thing about the banana is it's a sex-linked gene. It's the only gene in all the ball pythons where the males and females are associated with the breeding of how that banana was produced. So in some cases you have male bananas that are male makers, and some are female makers. I actually have a male maker banana. If I breed that banana to something else, all the banana offspring are all male males, which is an interesting anomaly. It's kind of maddening in some cases. You know, you're trying to shoot for a female banana and you have a male maker and all you end up with is the male bananas. So a lot of times if you're actually buying a banana, or especially if it's a male, as a matter of fact, if it's a female banana, the female bananas aren't male makers and female makers, it's only the males. So if you buy a male banana or a coral glow, most people think that the banana and coral glow are the same thing. You be sure to ask if it's a male maker or female maker, or ask where that was, kind of how it was produced. So if you took a male banana, which is a male maker, and you breed it to something else, all the male banana offspring are all male makers because it came from a male. It gets really confusing. So in fact, I did a whole video on male makers versus female makers, but sometimes it can be pretty maddening. I would definitely ask, you know, if it's a male maker or female maker if you're buying into the banana project. So here's what happens if you take a banana and you work it into the queen spin. Take a look at this. It's pretty amazing that the banana is so visually dominant that it brings all the color back into your axanthic queen spin, which is pretty amazing. It has a pretty amazing effect on this. And be sure, if it's a matter of fact, if you're buying even a combination like this, make sure you figure out, you know, up front if it's a male maker or a female maker, which can kind of drive you crazy. And kind of the other thing that is kind of a challenge of this project is the queen spin is 4 genes. So when you add other genes to the mix, you're talking about 5 gene combination, and it can get, you can kind of go down the rabbit hole if you breed, like if you take this 5 gene snake and you breed it to another 4 or 5 genes, and you end up with, like, you know, 10 possible genes. There could be, I've actually seen people do the calculations, and it's like anywhere from 1,000 to like 10,000 different possibilities as far as all the different offspring. And some people breed this to another 5 gene combo and they're like, help, I need help identifying all my hatchlings because I don't know what anything is. There's so many genes and so many possible combinations. It's kind of crazy. So here is the leopard, and the leopard is a dark gene. You mix it with a lot of combinations and you end up kind of darkening the background. And kind of the cool thing about the leopard is it really explodes the pattern. It really jumbles it up. And I'd say as far as, you know, the king of combos for dominant mutation, I'd say leopard is probably #1. It works really good with a lot of combinations. I really love all the different leopard combinations. Here's what happens if you work leopard into the queen spin. Take a look at this. It really changes the entire appearance of the snake. It really kind of jumbles up the pattern. You can still see a little bit of the pinstripe kind of coming through right from the top, but it pretty much almost overwhelms the axanthic look from the combination of the lesser and the spider. And you can definitely tell that the leopard is really darkening the background. Pretty amazing combination. So here's the last one I wanted to show you. This is the Enchi, and let me tell you, the Enchi queen spin I think is probably my favorite combination. Essentially what Enchi does is it really reduces the pattern. Sometimes you can get almost these tiger stripes on a lot of Enchis, and sometimes it can really vary depending on the line of Enchis. Some really reduce the patterns and some really don't reduce them as much. And kind of the cool thing about the Enchi is usually it brings in a lot of the orange color, works really well in a lot of your bright combinations. So if you're mixing Enchi with like Orange Dream and Pastel and Fire, especially if you work in the Super Enchi, you can make some really amazing, really bright combinations. So here's what happens if you take Enchi and you work it into the queen spin. Take a look at this. This is pretty amazing. Essentially what this is it's like a really reduced queen spin. It takes the pinstripe pattern and kind of really reduces it to just these little tiny stripes all down the snake. As a matter of fact, I was wondering how much this one was. Out of all these snakes, this is probably the one that I would buy. This is pretty awesome. This actually sold for $500, and these are really awesome jeans too. As a matter of fact, when I started in ball pythons, I was buying, like, you know, just the individual jeans, the pinstripe, and then I bought a spider, and a little bit later I bought a lesser and a pastel, and I just recently picked up Enchi, and kind of the shortcut would be to get something like this because you get all the jeans in one fell swoop, and then you could breed it to a normal and get like a whole rainbow of different colored hatchlings. Pretty awesome. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Shovel Nose Hogs asks, Can you do an update on your experience using hydrogen peroxide to clean off your snake eggs? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, I did a video right at the end of one of my videos. I used a little bit of hydrogen peroxide on an egg. I think that egg was egg bound, and I kind of had a last ditch attempt. I was going to try to clean it off with something new that I'd never tried before, and I tried hydrogen peroxide on that egg that was egg bound. I think it was egg bound for like a day. It seems like every time I have an egg bound egg, it never survives. So I kind of tried something new. And let me tell you, you do not want to use hydrogen peroxide on your snake eggs. That snake egg, I think it was within a matter of like 2 days, it turned completely hard, like hard as a rock. You definitely do not want to use hydrogen peroxide on snake eggs. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.